Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Gunderson. Today I'm going to be presenting on pre-flight checklists. So first off, why in the world do pilots need to use pre-flight checklists? Well, the biggest reason is to make sure that the aircraft is safe before getting the aircraft off the ground. You want to make sure that you identify any problems on the ground and not in the air. So that's really what they are for. In this presentation, we're going to dive into a little bit more. We're going to explore the purpose of them, the structure of pre-flight checklists, and also how to properly use them. So we'll get right into it. The purpose, as I mentioned, was to use it to be able to perform the necessary tasks before you get the aircraft into the air. You want to make sure that the engine and everything else is performing the way that it should. And if you use a pre-flight checklist, you're going to reduce errors and forgetting to checking something and things of that nature. As far as the structure goes of pre-flight checklists, you want to make sure that they have a chronological order and flow. For example, you want to check everything outside of the aircraft before you get inside the aircraft, or that could cause some problems, as I'm sure you can imagine. And overall, you just want it to be easy to follow. You want to be able to hold your place on where you're at pretty well without getting lost and actually end up going back to somewhere where you weren't, so you miss a few steps, things of that nature. And you also want to make sure that the information on the pre-flight checklist has come from the aircraft operating handbook. You want to make sure that the info or the stuff you need to check is on the pre-flight checklist. In this next slide here on slide 5, I pulled a picture from Diamond Star, the DA-40 fixed pitch aircraft. It's one I've flown a little bit, but it's the pre-flight checklist on that one. I really like it. It's easy to follow, and we'll kind of show you some details on it. So it's got those bolded categories, and then below those bolded categories, it's got numbers of things you need to check. So it makes it really easy. This one, so you start on the left, go top to bottom, and then you jump to the right, top to bottom. There's that dividing line in the middle. So really makes it pretty easy to do that, and then you'll start down at the next page. But that's a really good example of what you want yours to look like. They can be a little different, but you want them pretty similar to that. As far as using a pre-flight checklist, so there's really two methods. The first one is line by line, and the second is flow pattern and verify. Line by line, as the name states, is looking at one item and then going and checking it, coming back to two, going checking it, and then just all the way down. That way it works well. It's really hard to miss something that way, but it is pretty time consuming. That's where the next one comes in, the flow pattern verify. So you're gonna really memorize of really memorize the things you need to check in the aircraft in that category, and then come back and verify it. Make sure you checked them all, and then you can move on to the next one and continue. So both really good ways to use a checklist. Throughout this presentation, I was really trying to focus on simplifying text and illustrations and vocal pauses. Simplifying text and illustrations, so instead of having a whole book on each slide, you want to just have really bullet point items to where it'll jog your memory on what to say. And this is where it's important for you as a presenter to really know your information, because if you just have a little jogger, then you know what to say based off your knowledge and experience. And getting to the illustrations, you don't want to use too many, and you want to make sure that the ones you do use, you use them correctly. So you don't want them just there and then not even talk about them. You want to put them in there and make sure that you help your viewers learn what they can learn from that certain graph or picture or whatever you put in. The second thing I wanted to focus on was the vocal pauses. So this consists of really using filler words. So a few examples are and, you know, things like that. That can be very distracting, especially if your audience is paying attention to them. You can They can become overbearing if you use them too much. So what the book suggested is what I tried to use today, but just to pause instead of using any word. It does the same thing, but it still gives you time to think and it doesn't distract your audience as much. Personally, I think this presentation went fairly well. There's always room for improvement, and I think I still caught myself using some filler words here and there, but I think it's better than I usually do, so I'm happy about that. And I was happy with how using those simplified text really helped it flow a lot better. My references, so I used two websites, and then the last one is from the book in the course. In conclusion, so pre-flight checklists are very important to every flight and the safety of it. We want to make sure that pilots understand how to use them properly and that the people who are making the pre-flight checklists are structuring them with the right material so that they can do the job that they need to do. And lastly, I discussed two ways to improve presentations, which were the simplifying text and illustrations and the vocal pauses. If you guys will apply that to any presentation you'll give, you'll be able to have a better presentation that way. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening.